Welcome to Real Estate and Murder, a podcast about real estate and murder.
I am Amy Brockbank.
And I am Sarah Brager. We are both licensed real estate agents in the state of Utah who have a common fascination with true crime.
We are here to tell you stories of murder amongst the real estate community. It might be an agent, it might be a client, it might be an undetected serial killer.
When it comes to real estate crimes, some are predators and some are prey.
We just want to issue a trigger warning. The content of these cases can be difficult to hear from time to time, and please listen with care.
All right. Hey, everybody.
Hey, Sarah.
By everybody, I mean Amy and Danny and all of the listeners that we have collected over the last few episodes.
I know. It's been amazing.
It's been really phenomenal. We've had an incredible response. And this is, what case are we on?
We're case number 11.
Okay. Wow. Well, looking even back then to our throwback days, in case 4 we put out this week. And it's just, we've had an incredible response, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Tons of phone calls, tons of
downloads.
Yeah.
We're just so happy.
Yeah. We hope you guys are loving it as much as we are.
Okay. Well, today, though, on Real Estate and Murder, we're going to do something just a little bit different, Amy.
Yeah. We're doing something that we initially said we weren't going to do.
Well, I had this written down in our ideas column, and now here we are. So what we're going to do is we're going to feature, from time to time, we'll feature a murder that took place at famous real estate locations or specific properties.
Yeah.
Right? So it ties into real estate. And actually, in this episode, you're going to get a ton of information about property itself.
Yeah.
So this one's actually really exciting. Like, we'll call it like the mansion murders or, mansion murders. We'll call them mansion murders. Every once in a while, we'll throw one of these episodes in for fun.
Okay.
All right, cool. Amy.
Yeah.
What'd you do in real estate this week?
Oh, real estate's been fun this week.
Has it?
I think it's been fun.
No, I mean, I was like encouraging you. Like, has it? Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you.
Yeah, no, I have just been fielding a lot of questions. Chairman Powell went in front of Congress this week, and there's just a lot of stuff happening in the market itself that people are interested in knowing. It's an election year for the U.S. There's a lot of volatility, I guess, in the market, or people are hoping that it's going to downtick rates or whatever. But interesting, I have been coaching clients through, all the clients that bought earlier and have really low interest rates, but maybe the house isn't right for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're trying to figure out the higher interest rate versus the payment and what that would look like, but also being able to pay off some stuff with their equity that they have, and their payment is actually the same or even maybe a little bit less than even if they have the low interest payment. So talk to your lenders, see if that works for you guys.
Right. And that's actually an amazing strategy for buyers in the market that we're in right now. Kind of like rolling in your debt and also being able to, I mean, what do you want to call it? Upgrade is the word that's used a lot. But for a lot of people, they're finding a property equal or similar that they also love. And you can just kind of rid yourself of a lot of that debt by strategizing, again, your loan options.
Yeah, and I guess I should clarify, like, their monthly payment isn't necessarily the same, but the amount of debt payments that they were making is less than what they were making with the higher interest rate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because if you have a credit card with an APR of 29% versus a mortgage at even 7%, the debt over time can be rolled in a much more beneficial way.
Yeah.
And actually, that's a fascinating topic for buyers right now. So if you have more questions about that, because that could be a topic we would get into on a whole another episode, right, where we just explain how all of that works. But, reach out with questions.
Yeah.
Send us your email. All of our social contacts and links are going to be in our show notes. So reach out, and we love talking about that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting to us, speaking of real estate this week, because when we're in a market that maybe has been a little bit challenging recently, or challenging for buyers and sellers back and forth, right? When we start to get a lot of questions and we're taking phone calls from clients like that and having a lot of real estate conversation, to us, that's a really good indicator of ramping up.
Yeah.
Right? Of people being excited again. And that is a good indicator of what's to come.
Yeah. I think professionals use the term like warm lead
Yeah.
instead of like people are warming up to the idea.
Yeah, that's great. So that was your week. That is fun.
Yeah, I'm losing my voice. I don't know why. Well, Sarah scared me half to death earlier, so that's probably why.
You guys, Amy's really mad at me right now. We'll just get it out of the way right now. I told Amy, I love what we're doing. I'm so happy about what we're doing. I'm going to drag Danny, our editor, down with me because we were talking about some strategies and ideas to get our podcast out there to even more listeners. And we started talking about doing a live podcast recording, and Amy has absolutely severed our friendship.
I mean, not really, but public speaking is not it's different when you're in a podcast room and I'm just talking to you and our editor's here and, a few people, we have a guest or whatever. But yeah.
That's fine. We can just have you on stage and we'll put like a curtain around you.
Yeah, maybe.
So no one can see you.
I'll just have one of those brown paper bags that are.
Yeah, that's fine too. You're going to do great. You're going to do great. Okay, well, that's our week this week, I guess.
What did you do in real estate?
Well, kind of the same thing. Had a lot of conversation. Working really closely with a new lender that we had some excellent training with this week. Super exciting. Spent a lot of time this week focusing on the prep for kind of the winding down of summer and into fall a little bit, if you will. And what I mean by that is getting back in touch with and keeping in front and in contact with your clients that are still interested, but the summer slows things down a little bit traditionally, right? So making a plan to still be available and being accessible to your clients is what you do in times like these, right? Like we have some time to prep and plan for what's coming up next. And we typically see the market here in Utah, where we are, our hyperlocal market, start to pick up a little bit at the end of summer and fall. So doing all that kind of preparation work. And that includes like preparing marketing materials, making sure my website's finely tuned, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was my week. All right. Well, Amy, let's introduce the case.
Okay.
Because this is exciting. So today we're actually covering the case of the infamous murder that took place at the Los Feliz mansion.
Yes.
Hey, exciting.
I know. It's a wild rabbit hole.
It is. And we say that in particular about this episode because when you have the real estate be kind of the subject of the story, the murder is, of course, but do you see what I mean? Like, it's the haunting of the property is what really catches a lot of attention. And that makes for a big variance of information out there. And so we've actually spent weeks on this particular topic, studying.
Yeah. The first night that I was able to actually research the material, it was 11 o'clock at night. I was staying in a house where a death had actually occurred in the house that I'm staying at. And I was in another state and I started
Hearing
researching. I started researching this case, and the first thing that popped up, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, I literally cursed her name. I was like, "Oh,
I'm sure
Sarah.
You did." I'm sure you did, which makes sense.
So freaked out,
makes sense. I keep tripping over cracks lately, and now that makes sense. Thanks, Amy.
Put a hex on Sarah. Not really.
Oh, this is exciting though, and because, again, the subject of the case focuses a lot on the actual real estate today, we're going to give you a lot of background, again, about the property itself, the location, the area.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into the murder and the facts and the misnomers about it.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so as always then, I'm going to kick off by giving us the market statistics for the current Los Feliz real estate market. Okay, so this is today's time. This information that I collected, the source I used today was realtor.com. So when a well-renowned brand like that is producing these results, we know that we can trust them. But also, I'll try and explain how these numbers kind of come together as we go. So it makes sense. The median listing price for a home in Los Feliz was $2.5 million in June of this year, 2024.
Wow.
Which actually is trending down.
Of course it is.
12% less year over year than last year.
12%.
Now, that's one of the things that I want to kind of dive into because we're reading like a basic statistic without maybe understanding the math of how it got there. But when you have homes that are in this high of a price range, but you're in an area where there's variance in the types of properties, it's going to skew the numbers a little bit. So say a $2.5 million home stays on the market for 2 years, which happens sometimes,
Yeah.
right? Or more.
Well, and you're in an area of California where you have probably neighborhoods of mega mansions versus,
Condos.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So the median listing home price per square foot was $1,000, which makes this one of the most expensive zip codes currently in the United States. The median home sold price was $2.2 million overall, year over year, we're talking. And these properties, like I said, they range widely in size. There's everything from 3-bedroom homes to 10-bedroom homes,
Yeah.
5,000 square feet to 12,000 square feet. So there's a really wide variance, which is why you get a variance in the data, right? Because we're just talking about the amount of homes versus the
Yeah.
equation. Okay. So according to Realtor.com, on average, homes in Los Feliz sell after 44 days on market. The trend for median days on market has gone up since last month. So this research would have been published at the end of June because we're reading it in July. So it's gone up a little bit in the summer. That's normal. And slightly down since last year all over, though.
Okay.
So when we kind of step back and look at how all those numbers play together, it seems like the market in that particular neighborhood is kind of a what do you call this? I'm doing this
A roller
motion.
coaster?
Yeah, roller coaster. A little bit of a roller coaster. As of today, there are 75 homes for sale in Los Feliz. And by today, we are recording this in July, mid-July. So when this episode comes out, it'll be further down. But as of now, there's 75 homes for sale in Los Feliz, 6 of which were newly listed this week. And additionally, there are 116 rental properties that range anywhere from $1.3 thousand to $30,000 a month for rent.
Wow.
Get that range.
How would you like to pay $30,000 a month for rent?
I mean, for $30,000 a month, you can own 10 properties, So I don't know. I don't know how I would feel about that. But I can
Yeah.
imagine, given the area that we're in, which I'm going to get into kind of the neighborhood and the area in just a second here, that people might rent properties for short-term purposes.
Yeah.
Okay. So in this
Just
neighborhood,
filming locations. or
exactly.
something.
That's exactly
Yeah.
what I was going to say is filming locations, maybe actors that are coming into town to do a project that is only going to last a few months or something like
Yeah.
that. So, all right. Well, Amy, I'm going to tell you a little bit just about the neighborhood overall
Okay.
of Los Feliz, California. So if you think that you've never heard of this area or that it doesn't sound familiar, just think again, because I bet you have. So Los Feliz is home to famous Griffith Park, which again, if you think you haven't heard of it, Google it really quick. All of the photos that come up immediately, you're like, oh, yeah, totally know that one.
Yeah.
It is a large, almost 4,000 acre park, and it has that beautiful observatory that kind of looks like a giant mausoleum almost, and it sits on top of the hillside, and it overlooks all of Hollywood.
Yeah.
So oftentimes when you get that shot of LA, like you're coming from that kind of perspective. So it's a hillside neighborhood in the greater Hollywood area, and it encompasses part of the Santa Monica Mountains. So you can imagine like you're in that really
Yeah.
hilly terrain. The neighborhood is named after the Feliz family of Californios who owned the area since 1795 when Jose Feliz was granted Rancho Los Feliz. So Rancho Los Feliz is what the land that we're talking about today was originally called.
Yeah.
So following the American conquest of California, Rancho Los Feliz had a succession of owners in the Feliz family. So it was passed down and passed down. The first family sold it to a statesman named Antonio Cornell, and then it passed on to someone named James Lick, who eventually sold the rancho to someone named Griffith J. Griffith, who Griffith Park is named after.
Yeah.
Griffith, at some point, donated over half of the ranch. It's like just over 3,000 acres to the city of Los Angeles. And his purpose in doing this was that he actually made a statement that said, these beautiful public lands should be used for all of us to enjoy as equals. So he saw an opportunity to donate this land for it to be a recreational benefit to the community.
Yeah.
So remember Griffith J. Griffith, and remember the park, because I'm going to bring it up again later. All
I
right?
don't know that his name is there. Very hard to forget.
Okay, it's Griffith. Got it?
Yeah.
Write it down. Okay. All right, so that's just a little bit about the neighborhood. We're we're going to talk about some of the like urban legends of this land, and then
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you about some specific real estate in Los Filos. So,
Okay.
Amy, tell me about the urban legends of the Los Filos land area. Let's call it Ranchos Los Filos.
Okay. Yeah. So Jose was given the land by like a Spanish land grant, is how he kind of got the land. And it was passed down from different family members or relations of family. And you can look this up, and there's like this whole genealogy chart of like where it's passed down. But when the United States got California, there was this big, I don't know, land battle, land grab.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't exactly at the same time that California was switching over to the US, but there was this go behind where people were trying to take the land away from this family. And the myth is, the legend, whatever, that Felis's niece, so after it's passed down several family members, the niece, she's a teenager at the time, she put a curse on the land. And
I like that.
I'll just read what she
like it.
says. A blight shall fall upon the face of this terrestrial paradise. The cattle shall no longer fatten, but sicken on its pastures. The field shall no longer respond to the toil of the tiller. The grand oak shall wither and die. The wrath of heaven and the vengeance of hell shall fall upon this land.
Okay, so I don't want to like upset this woman and get a curse on myself, but I'm just saying
She's passed away
that
a long
curse-
time ago.
Yeah, obviously. That curse is very specific, but it's interesting that actually this part of California is one of the wealthiest and most like abundant parts of
Yeah.
California. Just saying, maybe the curse didn't work, but don't come
Okay.
for me.
So maybe it did, though, because there was an aspiring actor who leapt to her death from the letter H on the Hollywood sign in 1932. And a fire swept through Griffith Park in 1933, killing 29 people.
Wow.
Okay. Then there's the Hotel Cecil
Okay.
that is also part of this property, which
is an infamous hotel.
Yes. So if Netflix, I think, has a documentary on Hotel Cecil. It's
Oh, yeah.
creepy. But you have the Night Stalker that has stayed there.
The Night Stalker serial killer.
Yeah, Richard Ramirez.
Oh, he's so creepy.
You have another person that was there that was a journalist that murdered 3 women. And you have this young Canadian tourist that the documentary features, where she fell into a water tank and it ended up being an accidental drowning but the whole series is just creepy on how
Elisa
she like,
Lam, right?
yeah, on how she like got into the water tank.
And that's just some of the deaths at that hotel, because I know if you look into that hotel, there's like,
there's
lists and
yeah,
lists.
there's tons and tons and tons. So I'm just going through like the highlights of it. But then you have, the Colorado Street Bridge that is in this area in Pasadena, and it's known as like the Suicide Bridge, where, a lot of people have died, and where the Black Dahlia was killed is in this area too. So there's a lot of death that surrounds this land, and we've only highlighted the more famous cases.
Right. Which I'm going to blow your mind even more now with some of those specific cases. Are you ready for that part?
Yeah, I'm ready for it.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about some specific homes in the Los Feliz neighborhood specifically, which is home to all of the things that you just discussed, that is just going to... Right, okay. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. In this same neighborhood as the Los Feliz Mansion, which is the subject of our episode today, there is the La Bianca house, which is almost it's similar looking. So it's a Spanish style property on a hillside. This is the house where Charles Manson and his followers, he I guess didn't attend the party, killed Lino and Rosemary La Bianca.
Wow.
Right after killing Sharon Tate and 4 others, also in California, not in the same neighborhood, but
Yeah.
that was in 1969. The La Bianca house just sold in 2021 for $1.875 million.
Interesting.
And it's the second time that this infamous piece of real estate has traded hands in the last 3 years. Okay, so it
Oh.
just gets sold and
Sold and
sold and
sold and
sold.
sold.
Also,
Which I think we may be able to explain later, probably in part 2 of our episode on why these houses may or may not be changing hands.
for sure. There's also famously the Soden House, which is a large Mayan-style home, is how it's described. So it was meant to be, the architect designed it to look like a Mayan temple.
Okay.
It was actually designed by famous architect Lloyd Wright.
Yeah.
And the original owner of the house was named John Soden. He was an artist and a photographer, and he and his wife Ruth owned the home. The Soden House was also once the home of the notorious Black Dahlia murder suspect, Dr. George Hodel.
Yeah.
Okay. Lloyd Wright is the son of the famed architect Frank Lloyd Wright, who was actually, he is on our list of podcast subjects
I know.
because he was brutally murdered alongside 6 others in a home that he had in Wisconsin, which we'll cover that in a later episode.
That's crazy.
Okay, let's keep going. Also in the Los Feliz neighborhood, we have the Ennis house. Now, again, if you think you don't know what this house is, I bet you do, so look it up. The Ennis house is this monstrous, blocky, again, Mayan-style home. So the Wrights had some kind of interest in this particular design. And it also is said to have notes of a cathedral. So imagine an old cathedral that kind of looks like a temple. Okay, this home was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. He designed it for Charles and Mabel Ennis in 1923, and then it was built in the following year. Many movies have been filmed here, lots of them. Most notably, probably The House on Haunted Hill, which
Oh,
was
yeah.
filmed in 1959. See, Amy was like,
Yeah.
yep, oh yeah. So is Danny, our editor. He's nodding. He's like, yeah, yeah. The storyline of that movie, briefly just to go over, is that the owner like invites people over and then challenges them to survive the night.
Yeah.
Okay. So famous house for hauntings. It's changed hands several times. And
Course
the
it
last
has.
owner, named Ron Burkle, sold the house in 2019 for $18 million.
Wow.
If you Google this house, you'll probably immediately recognize it. Okay. Then on Cromwell Avenue, which is one of the streets in the neighborhood, on February 14th of 1948, a realtor named Gladys Kern was stabbed to death while showing a home. The suspect of her murder was also being considered the suspect of the Black Dahlia murder.
No way.
And detectives actually chased this suspect across the country on foot. Like they chased him to Texas, all over the place. So I added this realtor to our list of podcast subjects to talk about because sometimes, as you and I, Amy, have been researching these cases, we've come across accidentally tie-ins that are
Yeah.
perfect fits for our podcast just by reading about something else.
Yeah.
So that's how I discovered the realtor named Gladys Kern.
Hmm.
So we'll follow up in another episode about her and how she ties into all of the excitement that was happening around the Black Dahlia murder. Okay. Also, I'll just skip to this one then. There was in 1957, so right in this time period that we're all talking about, we've mentioned, so far the homes I've mentioned, these incidences are happening anywhere from like the 30s up to the 50s and 60s, okay?
Yeah.
There are still unsolved murders of 3 women who in 1957 were all strangled to death by the suspect who later became known as the Los Feliz Strangler.
Wow.
So they were killed at different times and at different homes in Los Feliz. And they were very brutal stranglings. So I know strangling is brutal in general, but there were like ropes involved and it was very dark. So his victims' names were Marjorie Hipperson, Ruth Goldsmith, and Esther Greenwald. Okay. Still unsolved.
Wow.
And then most recently,
No way. It's unsolved.
yeah,
I
Yep.
wonder if there's DNA.
I mean, it was 1957, so I don't know what,
If
if any,
they've
concept of idea
yeah.
of DNA there was. And yeah, there potentially could be crime scene, like what do you call it? Like things that they collected at the scene
Mhm.
that would nowadays
Evidence.
provide,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what it's called, everyone, evidence that would, potentially have DNA on it. But I don't know. From the articles that I was reading this morning, which are fascinating because of the time period, the articles I was reading were not screenshots, but like snapshots of the newspaper page itself,
Yeah.
which makes it extra creepy.
Yeah.
But it's unsolved as of now. So, and then most recently in 2012, blossoming actor and Sons of Anarchy star named Johnny Lewis murdered his landlord by beating the 81-year-old Catherine Davis to death. He then took his life by falling or jumping off the roof of this home. Now, I say falling or jumping because it is up for debate if he was intending to complete suicide or if he actually fell off the roof in a fit because he was having a psychotic episode. But it is out there in a lot of material that he was intending to end his life. So this home in which this all happened, located in Los Feliz, is known as the Writer's Villa. And before it became this very dark crime scene, it was actually a very well-known, popular big bed and breakfast. And many now famous actors, actresses, writers, producers, directors, all of it would come and rent these rooms from Catherine while trying to break into the Hollywood scene.
Wow.
So this home is known to be kind of like a boarding home for people who then broke into the industry.
Trying to break into the industry.
Yeah, or trying. They don't mention
Yeah.
the ones that tried and didn't make it, but I'm sure
Yeah.
that they were there too. So that's just a little bit about some of these homes that are directly in the neighborhood of the Los Feliz murder mansion, which is our subject.
I mean, as we were like researching this and as we were coming up with more and more deaths that took place around this area and whether or not it did have to do with this hex that was placed on the land or curse or whatever you want to call it, like I sat there and thought, I wonder if you take a geographic map of any community or area and calculate how many deaths. Because I bet you'd be surprised at how many just
are coincidental to an area.
Or just maybe be like, oh, wow, I didn't realize 30 people died within this,
right.
Little square.
Sure.
I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I got you.
Acre of land.
Yeah.
You guys can't see my hands, but they're going in a circle.
Right. So kind of it could be coincidental, but it also could be haunted. That's what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. I've got one more for you guys. So remember that 3,000 plus acre park in Los Feliz, which is known as Griffith Park?
Yeah.
Griffith J. Griffith purchased the Rancho Los Feliz, which was approximately 4,000 acres at the time, in 1882, and he actually started an ostrich farm there. All right. Apparently, his purpose was to lure residents of Los Angeles to his nearby property developments and spread kind of his development and his land as a business. But these properties were supposedly haunted by the ghost of Antonio Feliz, one of the previous owners of the property. So after the property rush peaked and Griffith had sold and developed a lot of it, he donated 3,015 acres to the city of Los Angeles on December 16th, 1896. Okay?
Okay.
While vacationing in Santa Monica on September 3rd, 1903, Griffith shot his wife, Tina Mesmer Griffith,
What?
in the presidential suite of the Arcadia Hotel as she knelt on the floor in front of him. Amy's eyeballs are coming out of her head. The shot did not kill her. She did survive. However, she was left, her face was disfigured and she lost her right eye. So Griffith was charged with assault with a deadly weapon and intent to commit murder, which we call attempted murder today. But don't worry, everybody. Luckily, Griffith went to prison and served nearly 2 years.
Stop.
Does this sound at all familiar to the topic we're discussing today? Brutally murdering your wife.
1903, and he serves 2 years?
Yeah.
Does it say why?
Because she didn't die. It was attempted. And probably, I have no idea. I was not there, obviously. But perhaps the fact that he was wealthy and had a lot of money had something to do with it. However, I did read in an article that when he was released from prison, he tried to get back into the community and be a philanthropist again. and tried to donate more land. And he was trying to raise money to put certain facilities on Griffith Park, like a Boys and Girls Camp, like all of these different things. And the city of Los Angeles turned him down, and they were like, we don't want anything to do with you. We want your 3,000 acres, but we don't want anything to do with you.
But they still kept Griffith Park.
I mean, they'd already had
Park.
it. Yeah, because he donated it in 1896.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have changed the name.
Amy, Griffith Park is going to call you and yell at you if you keep going down this road. I don't know. I'm just saying Griffith Park was already established. They did not give it back. That's all I know.
I mean, they didn't have to give it back, but they could have changed the name. What was the wife's name?
Her name was Tina Mesmer Griffith.
Okay, Mesmer Park.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, that is fair.
I'm just saying, like,
that is a great point. Write them a letter. Contact customer service. I absolutely agree with you, but unfortunately, this park still bears his name. And I'm curious to know, now that we're talking about it out loud, if how many of the local residents know that story.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, I mean,
how many philanthropists? I can't even say that
I
word.
struggled through it too, and then I just went on.
I mean, there's a handful that, charitable donations, but they're smoke and mirrors, they're masking,
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a belief out there that more money, more problems, that people who have excessive amounts of wealth actually experience more struggle in some ways.
Or they're just evil people that are just there.
Or that.
Money protects them or something.
We are making ourselves huge targets this week.
Our editor can cut that out. It's fine.
All right. Well, that's what I had to share with you that I thought was mind blowing. I mean, we were researching the murder and the home, and then I completely went skiing, but it was a really fun deep dive. So there's a little bit about Los Feliz neighborhood.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the story we're going to share with you fits right into it so perfectly.
Yeah.
So,
it's a little wild.
It is wild. All right, Amy. So that's a little bit about the area, the neighborhood, the the hauntings, if you will, of Los Feliz, California. So I've got a question for you now that is a very common topic we deal with in real estate.
Yeah.
And that is, what do you do with a home where someone has been murdered? And that's what we call in real estate a stigmatized property.
Yeah, exactly. And we had done a little bit of research on this before with Lindsay Buziak, because that was our first episode. She was murdered in a house that she was showing. And we wondered what, ends up happening when a violent death occurs.
Right. And every state, real estate laws apply specifically to each state, right? They tie in there.
And worldwide, so we don't know. Yeah, we don't know Canadian law specifically for Lindsay Buziak.
Right.
But so Utah, we can start with Utah.
Let's do it. This is the burning question I get all the time. If there is a home where a murder has occurred, which I have a little list going, by the way, you guys, of murders that have occurred in Utah real estate. But, I'm sure every state has a list of them. I'm just saying it's recently come into conversation for myself. Do you have to disclose you're the agent selling the home, or you're the seller going to sell the home? Do you have to disclose
let me ask you
that a murder happened?
Sarah?
Or a suicide. We've got to throw that part in as well.
Yeah, for sure. If you're buying a house and you love the house and you want the house, but you find out a family of 4 has been killed in the house, does that make you not want to buy the house now?
Well, I had my answer in my head all the way up until you said family of 4, because that's like even darker. It's interesting. The notes that I have for my takeaway that we do at the end of every episode kind of involves this topic. So my mind might change throughout this story, but I would say instinctually, just off the top of the cuff here, if there was a murder that had occurred in that home, I would be like, okay, I love this home. This is going to be my home now. I'm going to bring fresh new energy with it. I'm not going to murder anyone, and it's going to be great. The house is going to be fine. A whole family, I don't know. That one's tough. And I actually do know of a couple of those properties that I mentioned that I have a little list going of Utah homes. Oftentimes the homes get destroyed. They get torn down. Whoever owns the land.
And nationwide, if there's like a big horrific crime that has happened, they do end up destroying the house. But a lot of times They don't. So in Utah specifically, we're a non-disclosure state here, which means you don't have to disclose
Right.
that someone has died in the house.
Yeah.
So that's why I was just asking. However, as an agent and what I tell my clients, I don't ask them about, so has anyone been murdered in this house? Like, I
No.
don't do that. But I propose the question to my clients, if you were buying a house, what would you want to know about the property?
Mm.
And that's what you just disclose everything that you can think of. But if you were buying the house, what would you want to know?
That's
Because in
interesting.
Utah, we have this big old questionnaire. It was 7 pages. Now it's almost 16 or something like that. It's
Yeah.
really, really long that goes through itemized questions anywhere from electrical to plumbing to
Irrigation.
exterior. Like,
Mhm.
it's all encompassing, but it never asks on there, was someone murdered?
Right. Which I'm sure there's logical reasoning behind that. Like, because the question in reality is, right, does a murder in a home affect its value?
Value,
And
yeah.
the answer to that is no in the property itself. Now, does it have impact on what the buyer and the consumer sees as value? Sure, it could,
Well,
but that's probably why it's not in any of the disclosures, because in those disclosures, those items can actually affect the value of the property,
so Sarah,
but a murder does not.
I'm going to stop you because I disagree
On which part?
on the part that it market value for a house is determined what a seller is willing to sell and a
Right.
buyer is willing to buy.
Yeah.
So you say it doesn't matter on the property, like if someone's murdered, but that's your market value
Sure.
standing. Whereas someone else might be like, no, it significantly devalues the property.
Right. And that's why I said
Yeah.
to the buyer consumer, it might
Yeah.
feel different. But in terms of just the disclosures of the condition of the home,
Sure.
you know, if you don't have to disclose if an event happened at that home, then that means the property condition, the size, the land, the water rights, all of those things that are in the disclosures wouldn't be affected by a consumer's opinion
Yeah.
of the home. So that's what I mean. Fair market value is absolutely what a seller is willing to sell for, a buyer is willing to buy for at an arm's length transaction, meaning if you both agree to the sales price, that dictates value.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as the disclosures are concerned, the condition of the home wouldn't be affected by an event.
Yeah.
The condition.
So I asked you about the family of 4.
Yes, and I have a different answer now.
Okay.
I changed my mind because here's a thought I had right after.
I was going to ask you another question, but you
Okay,
can
you
change
totally
yours.
can. You totally can. But this was a good thought. If I was considering purchasing a home and I found out that there had been a murder there, whether it was one person, 10 people, I don't know, that happened in 1904, wouldn't bother me. If it had happened in the last few years, yeah, that would absolutely turn
Change
me
your
off to the
mind.
property. Yeah. So I think that makes, especially if it was like, well, a husband murdered his wife in 1949. He stabbed her with her bread knife because she didn't cut a sandwich right. I'd be like, whoa, that's kind of cool. You know, there's a difference, I think, in how current
How current
it
okay.
is. Yeah. Okay. What's your question?
Well, I was just going to ask the degree of the crime. Like if someone had a mental breakdown and murdered someone versus, I mean, and we all hope, I think when we read these cases that a psychotic break has happened
I
to
think
murder
mental
someone.
illness to some extent is always involved.
Versus, just a random, I don't know, death.
Mhm.
And a death could be, anything,
Sure.
know,
Medical,
natural,
yeah,
whatever.
Sure.
So does that kind of differ in your viewpoint? Someone that has aged and passes away in a home versus, a murder?
I think for a lot of buyers, the answer would be yes. For me personally, my answer to all of this is I just don't want to know.
Yeah.
Just don't tell me. Because I mean, I'm not psychic. I'm not going to walk into a home and be like, you know what? I'm getting a vibe and uncover a murder in self-discovery that I now have no desire to be in that property for. Just don't ask, don't tell. I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Yeah. Have you ever been showing a property though where you feel kind of the hairs on the back of your neck
For sure.
stand up, and you're just like, this gives me the creeps. I hope my client says no to this house.
Absolutely. I have a picture I will show you. Okay, and I didn't post it on social media because we have to be very careful about like what we, how we are marketing or using materials.
We can't disparage a property.
Of course not. But I was at a home recently where there in a basement bedroom, there was some paint that was obviously like very old and the room had been pretty beat up. And no lie, you guys, there are 2 shadowy handprints on the paint.
Oh.
And it just, of course, screams creepy and terrible. But also last summer, I was helping a couple of my lovely clients buy a home. We went to one in Orem, and we did know that someone had passed away of natural age in that home because there was like the medical bed that was left in the home. The home was vacant, but someone left the
They were probably
bed
waiting
behind.
for like the medical company to come, because sometimes you can rent
come
them.
hurry and pick that stuff up before you put it on the market. Because my clients immediately were like, I don't know.
Hospice has been here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
This
is a subject we get asked about all the time and that we discuss all the time. But
Yeah.
do you happen to know about California? We're
I
talking
do.
about California. Okay.
So California has a law actually for stigmatized properties.
Yeah, I
and-
bet. Look at what we've just talked
I know.
about.
But
They're like, look, California, you have to be honest.
but they only have to disclose the first 3 years.
Oh, interesting.
the
So kind
death.
of what I said.
Yeah. So if it's recent, they have to
Hmm.
tell you, and otherwise, I guess just Google it or something. I mean, we can talk
makes
about
sense
like
to me,
due
though.
diligence. Like, there's all these things that we don't cover, but if
Sure.
you're interested in,
Researching your own property.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like that's up to every homeowner to do anyway.
That's so interesting.
So
That makes absolute sense to me because my answer just was, it would have to do with the time period. But that's, interesting.
see, and I'm more freaked out about the ones that happen later because I just feel like those are all the haunting
Like the older
shows.
ones?
Yeah, like
Oh,
old
okay.
house, old creaky, like the noise that comes through a chimney, and you are like, is that a woman whispering or is that not? Like,
Okay, so you would be fine buying a house where your family of 4 had been murdered. The reason the house is for sale
no,
is
I'm
because
just saying.
the inhabitants were murdered. But if it happened 100 years ago, you're like, absolutely not.
Yeah,
No.
I just think like I don't know. There's something creepy about
Mm-hmm.
the older the house is, and I love the old house charm. Like I'm not
Oh, sure.
disparaging against old houses, but it just is more creepy than a house that was built in, the 2000s and,
Had a really good cleaner.
maybe, yeah, I don't know. I mean, a family of 4 is off the table
Sure. Okay.
regardless, but
Fascinating.
yeah.
Well, I mean, that plays kind of right into the topic for today because the Los Feliz murder mansion, it's been called, right, is famous in part for the supposed continuing haunting of this property.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just start with a murder.
No.
Yeah, this property had people.
But there was a
Die
lot of
in it.
deaths.
That's what I
There was
mean.
like
Yeah.
several deaths in this house.
So is it really haunted or not?
I guess we're going to find out.
We're going to find out. Let's take a quick break. Let's go take a breather and
Yeah.
shake off all of that bad energy we just invited into our lives. And then let's dig right into the actual murder mansion.
All right.
All right.
Sounds
Talk to you in a
good.
minute.